I didn't flinch when the glass shattered. I didn't scream. I just stood there in the freezing cold warehouse of the San Francisco Flower Mart and watched my sister-in-law, Amber, swing a hammer into a vase of rare Ecuadorian orchids. It was 4:30 in the morning. The air smelled of wet earth, diesel fumes, and now the sharp green scent of crushed stems. "You think you're better than us?" Amber screamed, her face twisted and ugly under the harsh industrial lights. "Just because you sell flowers? Give me the money for my surgery, Sierra, or I swear to God, I'll break everything you own." She raised the hammer again, aiming for a bucket of white hydrangeas. Beside her, my brother Travis held up his phone, filming the entire thing, waiting for me to crack. Waiting for the content. I looked at the $8,000 worth of destroyed inventory at my feet. Then I looked at them. My hands were steady. My pulse was slow. I didn't say a word. I just reached into my back pocket and touched the cold edge of the plastic card that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened next, and exactly what legal document was in my back pocket while she was screaming, drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I pulled my phone out of my back pocket. My movements were slow, deliberate, the way you move when you are trying not to startle a wild animal. Or in this case, a wild, entitled relative with a hammer. Amber stopped screaming for a second, her chest heaving. She wiped a stray hair from her forehead, smearing mascara across her temple. "Who are you calling?" she spat. "Mom? Go ahead. Call her. She'll tell you to stop being a selfish witch and give me the money." Travis laughed, panning his phone camera toward me. "Yeah, call Mom, Sierra. Tell her how you're hoarding the family fortune while Amber is suffering." I didn't look at them. I looked down at my screen and tapped 3 numbers. Not my mother's number. Not my father's. 9. But. "Emergency," a voice said in my ear. "Police, fire, or medical?" "Police," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, hollow, completely devoid of the tremor that used to be there whenever I confronted my family. "I would like to report a felony vandalism in progress at the San Francisco Flower Mart. Stall 42. Amber froze. The hammer lowered an inch. "What are you doing?" I ignored her. "The perpetrator is still on the scene," I continued, reciting the facts like I was reading a supply list. "She is armed with a hammer. She has destroyed inventory valued at approximately $8,000. That is well over the $400 threshold for a felony charge in California." "You're calling the cops?" Travis shouted, finally lowering his phone. "Are you insane? She's family." "She is an intruder," I said to the dispatcher, making sure my brother heard every word. "I am the owner of the business. I want to press charges immediately." I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The silence in the warehouse was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of forklifts. Amber looked at me, her eyes wide, searching my face for the bluff. She was waiting for me to crack, to say just kidding, to apologize for scaring her. That's what the old Sierra would have done. The old Sierra would have paid the $25,000 just to make the screaming stop. But the old Sierra wasn't here. She had been smashed into pieces alongside the orchids on the concrete floor. "You're bluffing," Amber sneered, though her voice wavered. "You wouldn't arrest your brother's wife. Mom would kill you." "The police are 3 minutes away," I said. "I suggest you put down the hammer." Panic flickered in her eyes. She dropped the hammer, it clattered loudly on the concrete, and grabbed her purse. "Let's go, Travis. He's crazy. We're leaving." She turned toward the loading dock exit, her heels clicking fast on the cement. I didn't run. I simply walked over to the heavy steel hand truck we used for hauling 50-gallon drums of water and rolled it in front of the door. I locked the wheels. "You're not going anywhere," I said. "Move it, Sierra." Travis yelled, stepping toward me. He looked big, threatening, the way he always did when he wanted his way. "Get out of the way." I stood my ground. I was 5'4", but in that moment I felt 10 feet tall. "You wanted content, Travis? You wanted a show? You're going to get one." The siren started then. Low at first, then growing louder, bouncing off the metal walls of the market. Blue and red lights flashed through the high windows, painting the crushed flowers on the floor in violent, strobing colors. Other vendors were gathering now. Men and women I had worked alongside for 5 years. People who knew me. People who respected me. They stood in a circle, arms crossed, watching. When the officers walked in, Amber tried to turn on the tears. She wailed about a misunderstanding, about family drama. But the police didn't look at her tears. They looked at the shattered glass. They looked at the hammer on the floor. And then they looked at me. "Is this the woman, ma'am?" the officer asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at Amber. She was pleading now, mouthing the word please. I looked at Travis, who was glaring at me with pure hatred. "Yes," I said. "Felony vandalism. Take her away." Watching the handcuffs click around Amber's wrists was the coldest, most satisfying sound I had ever heard. As they marched her out past the rows of buckets filled with roses and lilies, I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. I sat in my private studio later that morning, the adrenaline finally starting to fade into a dull, throbbing ache behind my eyes. The silence here was different from the warehouse. It was clean. It smelled of eucalyptus and peace. Around my neck I was still wearing the lanyard. I pulled it off and stared at the square of laminated plastic dangling from the clip. The wholesale badge. To most people it looks like a simple ID card. A photo, a barcode, a magnetic strip. But to anyone in the San Francisco floral industry, this piece of plastic is gold. It is the keys to the kingdom. It took me 5 years to earn this. 5 years of waking up at 3 in the morning, every single day while the rest of the world was warm and asleep. 5 years of standing in freezing cold industrial refrigerators, sorting through thousands of stems until my fingers were so numb I couldn't feel them. 5 years of thorns tearing my skin, of hauling 50-pound buckets of water, of negotiating with growers who looked at a 24-year-old girl and laughed. I didn't inherit this business. I didn't get a loan from my parents. I built it stem by stem, bucket by bucket. This badge was the proof that I belonged in that market. It was non-transferable. It was earned. But to my family this badge didn't represent hard work. It didn't represent sacrifice. To them it just represented access. It was a magic wand that I was supposed to wave whenever they wanted something pretty or expensive or free. I realized then, sitting in the quiet, that I had fallen into a trap. A psychological trap called normalized cruelty. It happens slowly. When you are the capable one in the family, the one who works hard, the one who saves money, the one who solves problems, your generosity stops being a gift. It becomes a utility. Like water coming out of a faucet. Like electricity when you flip a switch. Nobody thanks the faucet for the water. They only get angry when it stops flowing. For years I had taught them that I was a resource, not a person. I paid off Travis's $15,000 debt when his crypto investment crashed, because my mother cried and said it would ruin his credit. I paid the mortgage on my parents' house for 5 years, secretly, because my father couldn't bear the shame of admitting he was broke. I bought the cars. I paid for the vacations they posted on Instagram. I did it because I thought if I gave enough, eventually they would see me. Eventually they would respect me. But yesterday the bill had finally come due and the price was too high. Amber had cornered me in the loading dock, her eyes bright with entitlement. I need $25,000, Sierra, she had said like she was asking for a stick of gum. I want the full mommy makeover. Lipo veneers, the works. I need to look good for my brand deals. $25,000. That was my entire quarterly bonus. That was the money I had saved to upgrade my studio's refrigeration system. When I said no, she didn't ask why. She didn't care that I had been up since 3 in the morning earning that money. She just looked at me with pure, unadulterated rage and said, "You're so selfish. You have all this money sitting in the bank and you won't even help family." That was the moment the trap snapped open. I looked at the badge in my hand. It was scratched and worn around the edges. It was heavy. They didn't want a sister. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an ATM that didn't ask questions. But the ATM was out of order. And the technician wasn't coming to fix it. They didn't knock. They pounded. It was 7 in the evening when the fist started hammering against my apartment door. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. I could feel the collective rage radiating through the wood. I opened the door and they surged in like a tidal wave of noise and accusation. My mother, Cynthia, led the charge. Her face was blotchy, her eyes swollen. Behind her came my father, Gary, looking grim and authoritative, like a judge walking into a courtroom. Then Travis. And finally Amber. She was out. She was wearing the same clothes she had been arrested in, her expensive blouse wrinkled, her mascara smeared into raccoon circles around her eyes. But she wasn't crying anymore. She was vibrating with malice. "You monster," my mother screamed, pushing past me into my living room. "You actually had her arrested. You put your brother's wife in a jail cell." "She destroyed my property," I said calmly, closing the door. "She committed a felony." "She was upset," my mother shrieked. "Family gets upset, Sierra. Family fights. You don't call the police on family. You have ruined our name. Do you know who saw that? Everyone at the market. The gossip is going to be unbearable." That was it. Not "Are you okay?" Not "I'm sorry she threatened you with a hammer." Just the gossip. And guess who paid her bail? Travis sneered, stepping forward. He held up a receipt. "You did." I looked at the slip of paper. He had used the emergency credit card I had given my parents 5 years ago. For medical emergencies only. They had used my own money to bail out the woman who destroyed my livelihood. "Consider it a down payment on the pain and suffering you caused her," Travis said, tossing the receipt onto my coffee table. My father, Gary, cleared his throat. The room went silent. He walked over to my window, looked out at the city, and then turned to face me. He was playing the patriarch. The wise leader fixing a rebellious child. "Sierra," he said, his voice deep and disappointed. "This has gone too far. You are clearly unstable. You've let this little flower business go to your head and now you're hurting people. You're out of control. I'm out of control? I asked. Amber smashed $8,000 worth of orchids because I wouldn't pay for her liposuction. It's not about the flowers, he snapped. It's about loyalty. And since you clearly don't understand that, we are going to have to make some changes. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He slapped it onto the table next to the bail receipt. This is a lease transfer agreement, he said. For the stall at the market. I stared at the paper. What? You're going to sign the stall over to Travis, my father stated as if he were ordering dinner. He's the man of the family. He needs a steady income to support his wife, especially after the trauma you just put her through. You've proven you're too emotional to handle the pressure. Travis will run the business from now on. You can work for him maybe if you apologize. It's family property anyway, my mother chimed in, nodding vigorously. We loaned you that $500 to start up. That stall belongs to us. I looked at them. I looked at the $500 they mentioned, a loan I had paid back within 2 weeks with interest. I looked at Travis, who couldn't keep a goldfish alive, let alone a perishable inventory business. They weren't asking. They were demanding. They truly believed that my business, my sweat, my 5 years of freezing mornings, belonged to them simply because I was their daughter. You want the stall? I asked quietly. We're taking the stall, Travis said, crossing his arms. Sign the paper, Sierra. Make it right. I looked at the document. Then I looked at my father. Hey, I said. I picked up the pen. It was a cheap ballpoint that Travis had probably stolen from a bank counter, but in that moment, it felt like a surgical instrument. Good choice, my father said, his shoulders relaxing. You'll thank us later. This stress was killing you anyway. I didn't look at him. I looked at the document. It was a standard lease transfer form for the San Francisco Flower Mart. It stated that the undersigned, me, was voluntarily transferring all rights and responsibilities for Stall 42 to Travis Anderson. Rights and responsibilities, I read aloud. Just sign it, Sierra, Amber snapped from the corner. She was already mentally decorating the space, probably imagining neon signs and pink velvet chairs. Stop being dramatic. I signed. My signature was clean, sharp, and final. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single silver key. It was the key to the roll-up metal door of the stall. Here, I said, sliding it across the coffee table. Travis snatched it up like it was the winning lottery ticket. He held it up to the light, grinning. Finally, he said. Finally, this family is going to have some real leadership. I've got big plans for that place. We're going to pivot to crypto-backed floral NFTs. The margins will be huge. My mother clapped her hands. Oh, Travis, that sounds brilliant. Sierra, your brother has vision. I stood up and walked to the hallway closet. I pulled out my personal tool bag, the one with my Japanese floral shears, my wire cutters, and my heavy-duty strippers. I slung it over my shoulder. Where are you going? My father asked. I'm leaving, I said. You have the stall. You have the business. You don't need me. Damn right we don't, Travis said, pocketing the key. As I walked to the door, I felt a strange, cold sense of amusement. It wasn't happiness. It was the satisfaction of watching someone steal a wallet that you know is empty. My family suffered from a specific kind of blindness. They believed owning the space meant owning the business. They saw the stall, the buckets, the location, and assumed the money came with it. But the San Francisco Flower Mart is a closed system. The lease they took on was a liability. $5,000 a month in rent, plus utilities and fees. The real asset was the wholesale badge. The badge is a personal license not tied to any stall. It requires years of audits, sponsorship, and approval. Without it, you can't buy a single stem. You're just standing in an expensive concrete box. The badge wasn't in the lease. It was in my tool bag. That night, I drove to a small warehouse I had already rented under my own name. I logged into the wholesaler system, placed orders, and redirected deliveries. While my brother had a key to a stall, I had access to the entire market. By morning, my warehouse was filling with flowers. At the same time, security flagged an unauthorized access attempt at stall 42. My brother and his wife had tried to enter the auction floor without a badge, and were stopped cold. The lease meant nothing. The license was non-transferable. They couldn't buy inventory. They couldn't sell anything. Hours later they found me. They demanded the badge. I refused. They accused me of setting them up. I told them the truth. They demanded the business without ever understanding how it worked. Then I handed my father an eviction notice. The house they lived in, the house they claimed as family property, was mine. I had saved it from foreclosure years earlier and let them stay rent-free. That arrangement was over. I closed the warehouse door and went back to work. 3 months later, my business is thriving. The stall was repossessed. My parents moved out. My sister-in-law's influencer career collapsed after her criminal charge. I didn't win by watching them fail. I won by stopping myself from being drained. Justice wasn't their downfall. Justice was my growth. You can't grow flowers in salted earth. Sometimes the only way to save the seed is to walk away.